Yeah, Ryan, nice job. Oh, thank you. Ryan, nice job. Yeah.
Awesome job.
At least warming.
Yeah, I think I would do according to him. But see what yours for.
What's your feet?
Thank you.
Where's your phone?
Wow. It went from an empty room to pretty much, or a full room to pretty much an empty room. Nothing clears your room like automation in Fedora.
They like automation in OpenShift, I guess. I'm here for automation in Fedora. I am a fan.
Payback is definitely part of the process.
What's your shirt say?
Sorry?
What's your shirt say? What?
Size matters not.
What's the gear?
For what? What is it?
It's Yoda and it's login trees. It's from some conference. I'm sure. Some cool startup around the world.
Size doesn't matter. They switched to Alpine Linux. Is this a tutorial or a talk?
Tutorial.
Awesome. I'm here to learn some practical things.
You're probably going to want most of the stuff on here. And since the network is so awesome here,
Yeah, I was just trying to get on the network and not. I saw also there's a talk on bad USB here as well, so that's...
You can choose to, well, it was my computer, so you can choose to...
I know, I'm just putting bad stuff on yours, that's all.
Thanks.
Actually, the network is pretty fast from
Okay, so I think
It's not logging on, it's not a matter of fast.
we're using VGA, right?
The gateway thing's not doing its thing.
My guess would be that you all know this guy. If not, this is Tim Flink, and he will tell you something about automated testing in Fedora. As soon as
It worked early. It
set up
worked just
this
an hour
set-
ago. All right.
Maybe there's an automated test for that.
You know, maybe there should be, but I think that's in the back.
I guess. Let's see. Try it again.
What is this gigantic thing I'm cupping off your USB?
It's a virtual machine image.
Can't
so
use,
good with
can't
technology.
use HDMI?
Nope. I forgot all my adapters at home.
Do you need one?
Do you have a mini display port to HDMI?
Yes. Because I tried that before too, and for whatever reason it doesn't work.
No, but that's what I did my presentation earlier today on it. I'm not.
It worked?
Yeah. Well, you saw the slides, didn't you?
Yeah. Because I tried that before with the Apple adapter, and
Whatever. It was good.
maybe there's a different version of these adapters around.
Like some things are more critical than others. You know, like things that are user files. And, you know. Oh, okay. Oh. I just tagged along. I have no idea what section it is.
Nice.
Oh, and here I thought that people actually wanted to hear what I have to say, and man, that
I'm
hurts.
here for you.
Sweet, you got at least one person. I feel better now. Warm fuzzies, you're back. I suppose it is probably about time to test or start. All right, so I have slides. If you should want to, because there's a bunch of links embedded in it that are probably going to be easier to click on. And then from there, it's if you can't tell, I was a Java programmer in a previous life. But Matt has the one USB stick I have with all of the files on it. There's a bunch of stuff to download and repos to clone. What I'm planning to do is, well, the original plan was to go through and teach everyone how to write tasks for Taskotron in particular. And before I start, I do want to say that we are just getting into having people that aren't the core developers writing tasks. So when you hit pain points, please tell us, because it's things that we want to fix, it's things that we need to fix. I mean, even just preparing for this talk, I hit about 10 things that just dogfooding. It's like, well, why do I have to do it this way? So if you find things, please tell us. Especially strange, huh? The same old. This worked. I swear, this worked
Start a
yesterday.
trace back, Tim.
You don't use it.
I blame Emacs.
That's fair.
How is that one? We use that. Yeah, good.
Yay. It ran. Oh. I never remember until I'm sitting up here, it's like, yes, white, because white on black text is so easy to read from a projector, or white text on a black background.
Nope, that's worse.
Can I do... I'm just going to fail. Is that reasonably okay to read?
It's okay.
You don't need to read, this bottom part doesn't matter. Thought I had all this stuff ready. Alright, so... Alright, so hopefully these slides are the same as the ones I put online. Like I said, there's a bunch of links in here. And I suppose I should probably start with telling people the stuff to download. Because being at a conference and relying on network is always such a great idea. So where did the USB stick go? If anyone's planning, if anyone wants to actually write the task, there's a bunch of files on there that I would suggest getting.
It's kind of slow because it's 3 gigabytes.
And the files in there, it is a virtual machine image, it is some Git repositories with tasks in them, and the contents of the Copa repository if for some reason your machine can't get to the network. Most of what you need is this command here. Where did that slide go? Oh, for right now, it's only going to work on Fedora 23 and newer, or at least the exact way I'm going to be telling you to do it. Does someone have something like Fedora 22, Fedora 21? You do?
Can you go back to the slide?
Sorry. Fedora 22 or you Fedora 22? Okay.
Quick, DNF upgrade.
No. Well, I'm not going to stop you from doing that. I would heavily recommend not doing that. I'm just trying to think of the best way to do it.
I will try later on virtual machine.
Okay. I mean, because the reason it's at 23 plus is the way that we spawn virtual machines is written in a way that requires a newer libvirt bindings than what's in Fedora 22. I think it's possible to fix it. It's just one of those things. It works for us. It works on my dev machine. What's wrong with yours? So if you can either create the virtual machine, I can show you some. I will show somewhat. You can point libtaskotron at the pre-created virtual machine. That will work. It's just the spawning that isn't going to work on Fedora 22. Oh, sorry that you were raising your hand. So just for my reference, who all is trying to follow along to create the task? All right.
What about the others?
Huh?
What about the others?
Checking your email.
Checking your email. I mean, I figured the three of you guys are here to throw out vegetables at me.
How much?
I will just follow and I don't know.
The slides, I still need to they're complete enough for me to do this today. They're not really complete enough for someone to follow along at home. That will be changing. The link will stay the same, and I will update that with the remainder of the instructions. And if all else fails, the full example is in a Git repository. It's in a Bitbucket repository. The link is also in the presentation. I think it says something about cheating. Yep, the link here. It's already in Git if you want to cheat, or you can write it from scratch. It's up to whomever. But if that USB stick is making its way around, I'll get started on, I guess the...
What's making that cool little flippy thing in your slides?
Huh? Why can't I think? It's a JavaScript. Why can't it's been a while back. Why can't I
It was
think?
so cool.
Reveal.js. That's what it is.
And I'm not sure if you know about, do you work for Red Hat?
Yeah.
Okay, so Red Hat has a corporate account on Slidescom,
Okay.
which uses Reveal.js. So you could use that if you want.
I don't know, I've never seen you around before. Are you sure you work for Red Hat?
I'm a community guy, man. One of the did you see my
I think the stuff you will never show, they find you will never.
I'm one of the sneaky people.
Alright, so getting into this. Okay, my name is Tim. This is, and I'm going to be talking about automated jobs in Fedora. This, more than most other things, I plan to be very informal. If you have a question, please get my attention, even if that means doing something you might consider rude. I would much rather have the answer the question at the time than to know or to find out about it later. Because odds are, if you have a question, someone else is going to have the question. So, that being said, some of the stuff I want to go over today is just a little bit of introduction, talk about some of the systems that are available in Fedora, which I'm probably going to breeze through because I think most of the people, if not everyone, either already knows it or was in my presentation earlier. And then basically start getting into the guts of how Taskotron works, specifically the runner within Taskotron, and start getting into writing a task to test the Apache HTTPD package. So, at the risk of sounding like a pitch for Zombo.com, you can do anything with Taskotron. Anything at all. The only limit is yourself. And it is kind of, Taskotron itself is designed to hand off to other things. I am not naive enough, and I am not full enough of myself to say that I know how to test everything better than everyone else does. So the idea is to have Taskotron coordinate. So it will schedule the jobs, it will provision the virtual machine, and then hand off to someone else's tool. If Matt wanted to test Docker, or if Camille wanted to test frame rates on X. They may know more about these things than I do as someone who is, administrating Taskotron or writing Taskotron. So when I say it can do anything at all, that's kind of what I'm getting at, is the idea is to hand it off to something else, and to get the testing tools in the hands of the people who know how to test the things that need to be tested, rather than assuming we know better than they do. Oh wow, I didn't take that slide out. So I have a couple of things, because the way that I define these things aren't as common. I do not like the word automated test. I think it is overused, and I generally do not use it. The reason I don't use it is because I'm a big believer in the value of human testers. And by equating the things that a machine can do with what a human can do, sort of denigrates what that very capable and smart human can do. So I tend to use the words task and check. A check is a kind of test, but the idea of a check is what most people think of as an automated test. It is something where you run it and it gives you a binary pass or fail. So all checks are tests, but not all tests are checks. And in most cases, when we're doing test automation, what we are interested in is checks, because we want to be able to feed that binary pass-fail answer through a system and use those results for something. And then the task is just purposely vague. Like, one of the reasons this is called Taskotron is because it's not limited to what we would usually consider automated tests. One of the big things behind it was that especially in Fedora, everyone has more to do than they have time for. And instead of having 10 different automation systems set up by 10 different people, one to go do kernel and one to test the graphical stuff, and then another one to go do all this kind of stuff, that's a lot of overhead. So the idea was that the system will work on tasks. So whether that be static analysis for code, whether that be running things that we would traditionally think of as an automated test, any of those things are tasks and pretty much can be automated with this system. So, I'm just going to breeze through this because I'm pretty sure, was anyone doesn't either know these three systems or was not in my presentation earlier? Okay, I will go through it quickly.
Yeah, if you can go quickly through how Beaker is available with Fedora, because I didn't know we had that already.
Yeah, that's a messaging issue because most people say that.
Is it ready now?
It's new.
It is mostly ready.
Because I know you had given me access like maybe a couple months ago, and I could get in, but I think I was trying to request a system, but I don't think I ever got one. But
I did not know about that. The staging
Yeah.
system should be working. The production system looks like it's working, but it really doesn't.
maybe that's what I was getting at.
So it's a matter of me finding the time to redeploy the systems to production is pretty much what it's lacking.
Yeah, or maybe,
But the staging, when other systems it depends on aren't broken, staging works fine.
yeah.
Right now it doesn't work because for some reason the staging auth systems are down.
Gotcha. I think maybe that's the one you told me to ignore an error when you first
Yeah.
log in or
Yep.
something like that. But if we, as part of this at the very end, if we just went through getting a system in Beaker.
We can try. I tried getting it. I've been having network problems all day.
Okay.
So we can try, but I make no guarantees that it will actually work. So Beaker is a system originally developed by Red Hat. It is still maintained by Red Hat. It is used extensively to test RHEL. It is a combination of test automation system. It's a test coordination, test automation system, and lab management. So the idea is to manage, so you have a lab of test systems. So Beaker can manage, okay, this one's getting this test now, this one's getting this test, and run things through to try and make things as efficient as possible. It is, in my mind, very good for tests that require bare metal and things that are generally a bit longer. Most Beaker workflows work as you are given the machine, it does install with Anaconda, you get the machine, you can prepare it, then you run the tests. If you have something that takes 30 seconds to a minute and you are installing an OS via Anaconda every time, that I'm sure there might be a use case or two where that makes sense, but it seems a bit silly. But that being said, I've done hardware automation before, and I have no intention of ever doing it again if I can get away with it. So they're doing it, and as long as I can piggyback off their work, he works on Beaker. I am very happy to do that. I'll get more into Taskotron. OpenQA was originally from the OpenSUSE people. It is, in a nutshell, it takes screenshots and it has pre-recorded screenshots. So it goes through running a test, it takes a screenshot of the graphical output, and you tell it, okay, there's this little button I'm looking for, and here's a picture of it. Go find it, and if you can find it, click on it. And a tree of tests, of steps that would make up the test. It's something that's very good for graphical testing, and it's something that's very good for environments where you can't have like a testing interface, a testing where something like Dogtail, you can't look at the accessibility information. You can't put some sort of test interface to facilitate your testing. Any questions so far?
I do. If you write a test for OpenQA, does it have to be in a certain language?
It has to be created through the OpenQA web interface.
Okay. All right.
Isn't that not necessarily? Oh, ask the question. He knows more than I do about OpenQA.
Okay, so I'll try to cut it short. Basically, what you need to do, you need to provide the screenshots and some metadata. You can
Screenshots, like pictures.
yes.
Okay. Okay.
doesn't necessarily need to be a picture because it's basically fragments, but we usually do it in a way that we take a screenshot of a virtual machine, something like that, and then we say, okay, this part here is a button, this part here is something like that, and then you can eternally use these fragments.
Okay, so you can test graphical.
Yes,
applications.
exactly. So it's mostly for graphical testing.
Okay.
And you can do this via web interface, which is very user-friendly. You can do it by hand. You can use some other tools that I don't use, but I know that evidence uses stuff like that.
Okay.
And then you just write the test in Perl, but you are not using Perl too much because you are just using a library. Like you are using method calls.
Right.
It could be anything. Like it's as simple as anything else. Like you just call some methods. You don't necessarily need to deal with Perl as such.
Okay.
So
you don't have to write your test in Perl. You just
Yes.
have to hook to your test using Perl. Because that was a misconception I had when I looked at it originally. I thought, oh, I'll have to write all my tests.
You basically just write the script with tests in Perl,
Okay.
but you can provide the data, like the images with the fragments with metadata. You provide it like any way you want.
Okay. Thank you.
This is just an example of the front end. This is a failed run from last night. I don't know enough about OpenQA to tell you exactly what went wrong, but that's what it looks like.
Okay. If you have questions, we can reply to
Yep. Yeah, OpenQA questions are best sent to him or Adam Williamson. Are the two that are the best to ask OpenQA questions to. Any other questions before we get into more detail?
The USB stick, where is it?
Yeah.
Oh, so
All right, so does anyone still need this URL? I suspect I'm going to be drawing stuff. So within Taskotron, we have 3 different real ways to execute a task, and we call them local, SSH, and libvirt. Local execution is pretty much what it sounds like. It reads in the task, and it will run things on the system from which it was executed from. So if I was in local mode and I ran it from my laptop, it would run those commands on my laptop. And it's good for quick local execution. It's good for development in certain cases. Things where you need it to be quick, it's not destructive, it's not going to cause any problems, is usually when it's useful. You start getting into the more complicated stuff. Which would be then SSH. So this basically then delegates the execution to a remote machine. So if I were to use SSH mode on my laptop and I had a virtual machine, I start the task, it says, oh look, I have a virtual machine right here, I can log in. And then instead of running things locally on my laptop, it does them on whatever that remote machine is. And then when it's done, it knows where the output's supposed to be, it gets the output, extracts it, puts it back on the machine from which you started. And that way, you can run things on a remote machine. So you could, delete the root file system. You can install packages and not have to worry about side effects. You can run on different versions of Fedora. You could run it, on other things or other versions than what your starting system is. And it just gives you quite a bit more flexibility. And in our mind, it's generally used for development. Which will make more sense in a second. But as far as how this actually works, does this make sense? As far as, you start from the machine, it sends commands to wherever your target is, and, when all that's, back and forth, it does all the commands, does the task, and then when it's done, we know where the output's supposed to be, we extract it and bring it back to where we started from. Does this process make sense? So then we get into what we call libvirt, and this is what happens in production. Basically, we start with our execution. So I'm on my laptop, I'm going to start this in libvirt mode. So I point at a task, and it looks at it and says, okay, I need a virtual machine for this. So it finds an image, it spawns a virtual machine using that image, gets the IP of that, and then basically does the SSH The same thing with the SSH execution. So, but instead of the VM being there to start with, so we create the virtual machine. But then that process is the same, where it sends the commands to the virtual machine, does all the tasks, gets the stuff out of it when it's done, and then when all of that execution is done, when all of the output is out of that virtual machine, it kills that virtual machine, leaving the system you started in basically the same state as when you began.
So are these like basically plugins for different modes of application? So how easy is it to add another one?
I'm assuming you're talking about like the cloud use case?
Yeah, or just a test and a container use case for something faster than a VM.
Right now, containers aren't really possible. The reason we went that direction is we're trying to satisfy, there are cases where a container won't work, but there are no cases in which a virtual machine won't work. There are a lot of times when you want that isolation at this level. So we may end up doing containers in the future, but that's not on the immediate roadmap.
Yeah.
In terms of selecting another target virtual machine is not yet supported. That will be coming relatively soon.
Yeah.
How do you work with multi-machine tests?
That comes along with, we don't support it yet. It's on the roadmap, but it's sort of, we're trying to do baby steps. So now we've got the ability to isolate the task execution, which was a big blocker for us. And the multi-host and selecting images are going to be coming later.
Where do the images come from for virtual machine?
They can come from just about wherever, as long as it's like a QCOW, as long as it's
It's my problem. It's my problem.
It can't. Well, I mean, I'm saying it can be flexible. I do publish the virtual machine. Like we have virtual machine images, and we publish them when we rebuild them. That's what was on that USB stick. Was one of those virtual machine images.
Yeah.
That is, it's basically a minimal Fedora install, and it has the Taskotron packages on it, and that's about it. Oh, and we pre-populate the DNF cache. So you can do either way. You can either use the Fedora, like any of the Fedora cloud images, anything that Test Cloud supports, which is what we use to boot the virtual machines. And for now, that's Red Hat land. So one of the Red Hat derivatives.
So there's client packages that need to be inside of it. I know you don't have to have it, but you mentioned a rebuild VM. There's client Taskotron packages, like something that can talk back to the host, or what?
Kind of. They don't have to be there. As part of the spawning process, the task will check and see if libtaskotron is installed. I mean, basically, it's relatively simple. You from here, if this is a separate computer and that I'm like a representation of that remote machine, and this is where I'm starting from.
Right.
So I start here. This spawns this computer,
right,
and then checks to see if libtaskotron is installed.
Right.
And then it SSHs into here, runs libtaskotron in local mode, and does all of that stuff, and then extracts the output. So it is a client in a matter of speaking,
right,
but it is not, it is basically just the same thing without SSH. It's just the same as putting it in that local mode.
Yeah, I was just wondering what the benefit is of, I guess, having the client in, if it was necessary, if it wasn't. What you're saying is it is necessary, but you don't have to have it in there when you start, because it will install it for you, right?
Correct.
But could you not do something like what Ansible does, where it just copies over the things that it's going to execute, or no? That way you could just use the cloud image and not have to rebuild it.
You don't have to rebuild it. We do it because it's faster.
Yeah. Okay.
Because we want the DNF we don't want to be updating the DNF cache every time we spawn a virtual machine. So we want the DNF cache. We want to have libtaskotron in there already. We probably could do it that way.
But that would just be kind of cool, because then literally you can bring whatever image that you build and run it through.
But you can. It's like I think slight misconception. The Taskotron is not a client. It's just a runner. So it's just like a binary that you run,
right, exactly,
and give it to the test.
So in all honesty, we could do that.
Yes.
It's not something we've designed for. It's not something we do.
Okay.
At some point, I want to support Ansible playbooks as part of this, but we're starting to get further down the roadmap. But to answer your question, we could have done that, we did not. It was easier to do it this way.
What is Test Cloud?
Test Cloud, I suppose I probably shouldn't have assumed everyone knew what that was. So Test Cloud started life as a script written by one of our coworkers because he wanted to test cloud images. Because the raw and the QCOW2 images that get produced for Fedora, you can't just throw those at Virtual Machine Manager and boot them.
But it's a package that I can install.
Yes, it's in Fedora 23.
It's not a piece of infrastructure.
Nope. No, it is designed to be about this. It is when you want a cloud but have no interest in either depending on or installing OpenStack. It is you feed it a cloud image and it prepares disks in such a way that CloudNet will work, injects a password, does a few increases the size of the disk if you want, and then boots it as a local virtual machine.
It's sort of the answer to the question, but we get a lot because the cloud image does not have a password. You cannot log into it unless you do something, special. And so one of the special things is feed metadata in, and any real cloud environment has that very easily accessible. And pre-does it, but your machine doesn't. So we were getting a lot of questions about that.
And so it's really just it's a convenience. It started off as a convenience layer for booting virtual machines. But we use it because it is simple and doesn't require, it still lets us have this paradigm of you can go install the Taskotron, you can install Test Cloud, and you can run it basically on your local machine without the need for production infrastructure. So it's trying to keep with that, where if we were depending on OpenStack, we could tell people to install OpenStack. I think that would be asking a bit much and somewhat naive, but that's really why we went with Test Cloud instead of OpenStack as one of the better known things.
Okay, so it's implementation detail, more or less.
Yeah.
From my point of view.
Yeah.
Can you do parts of the task locally? Can you do parts of a task locally or parts of an execution locally?
Right now it is all or nothing. We don't support the concept of some things locally, some things remotely.
It would be cool, for example, if I wanted to check out the latest, the latest commit for, let's say, some ARM application, and then cross-build it, and then install that and test it. And so, because I don't want to build it slower or something like that. So, to test something that would run on a machine which doesn't have enough resources to build something fast, I would rather build it locally and then.
So you could cross-compile a binary, you copy it over.
And I want the cross-compile to be a task because I would like to see that it passes our phase as well. Just saying that would be cool to have.
Yeah, and it's just if you have suggestions like that, let us know because. Like I said before, we want to know what the pain points are, but there's another thing where there are parts of what we have set up that we have deliberately left as simple as possible because we want to see what people do with it.
I guess going ahead, can you chain tasks? You have dependent tasks?
Yes and no. You cannot do it from the task itself, but every time you put it into our result system, that will emit a Fed message, and everything from the parent Taskotron system is triggered off of a Fed message.
So you could do that. You could have, that you'd have to be in the infrastructure, but you would have your first test be build the thing, and the second test be use the thing.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
so then you don't need to change it.
There's one other thing. I hope I'm not giving you bad advice, but Beaker, for example, uses a test harness, and at the moment that test harness is included in Python, but there's another one called Restraint, beaker-project.org if you want to check it out, and this Restraint you can also run the tests locally.
Okay.
Maybe something to check out. I'm not sure if that will help you on that, but okay.
Any other questions? Just making sense so far, the difference between local execution, remote, and then this spawn a virtual machine for the purpose of running a task? Cool. So I'm repeating a few bits here, but one of the things I want to emphasize because as we're getting to the point where we can accept tasks from other people, I really want to make sure I'm clear, so this won't be the last time I say it. If you want to write something for Taskotron, you do not need to install the entire system. The only thing you need is, at a minimum, you need libtaskotron core, and probably libtaskotron Fedora, both of which are a couple hundred K in size and have 1 or 2 dependencies. When you start getting into the libtaskotron disposable, that's going to pull in libvirt, which, depending on what's on your system, may pull in things. But at the most, you're going to be pulling libvirt in, which is probably on it's on my laptop already. But once you have that installed, you can do pretty much anything that the production system can. You know, without the obvious exceptions of, well, it's not in infrastructure, it can't access the same machines, it doesn't have credentials, that kind of stuff. But that is one of the bigger design paradigms that we were going for, is that it's easy for people to write tasks for it. If you want to develop something for it, you install 1 or 2 RPMs, and then you can go off and do pretty much what the production environment does. So that, again, I will probably repeat myself again. So the other thing that we went for was basically keeping things as loosely coupled as sanely possible. One of the precursor to Taskotron was very tightly coupled. So, we had to change everything at the same time because you couldn't, mess with this part. As soon as you mess with this part, you'd have to do something over here to mirror that change. And it got difficult for us to maintain this really tightly coupled system. So in this case, we have libtaskotron, which is complex enough on itself, but that is only the runner. That goes through, it reads how you've written the task, it goes through, it will spawn the virtual machine, it runs everything, and then pulls back data. It doesn't serve results. It doesn't have an auth system. It doesn't schedule jobs. It doesn't do any of that. The system, the Taskotron system as a whole is not necessarily, is made up of many parts, of which libtaskotron is one. We use BuildBot for delegation. We have a system called ResultsDB, which is on purpose very simple, but it is a database with a RESTful interface that you can put results into and you can query results from. It all comes out in JSON. We have what we call execdb, which is, for lack of a better way to put it, a reference point. So the purpose of execdb is when we start all of this, we say, hey, look, we had this signal that was a new build of HTTP. And when that happened, we scheduled this task, and this task, and these are the URLs to get to it. So we can change out any single one of these pieces without having to worry about some of the problems you get with the really tightly coupled systems. And the last thing is we don't want to restrict people to a single language or framework. I can sit here and list off several frameworks, several harnesses, several things that people use. Not even getting into different languages. Just because, we do use Python. Libtaskotron was written in Python. You will get the most convenience methods if you also use Python and use our utilities. But as long as what you're running spits out something we can understand, be that XUnit, XML, TAP, or we have a results YAML format, then it can be understood and it can be reported to the right places. It can show up in Bodhi, it can show up on dashboards. It can do all of those things. So that the emphasis there is as long as that interface, that results interface is there, you can use libtaskotron for whatever you had. Any questions at this point? Okay. So, getting into writing tasks. As I mentioned before, as far as spawning virtual machines, Fedora 23 Plus is needed. Libtaskotron should work with anything Fedora 21 Plus, or well, that's what we've tested it with. But it is also Python 2 for now. Just looking at some example jobs, I'm going to skip this one for now because basically that's what I'm going to walk people through. One of the other ones that I wrote recently, and hopefully I have the network to actually load it. So for Docker, Their upstream their upstream test suite that is run in Autotest, and it's something they call Docker Autotest because that makes sense. And what this will do is it builds, it spawns that virtual machine, it installs Docker, installs all those dependencies, and runs through the entire upstream test suite, and then translates that into a pass-fail that we can then put into our systems.
What interface is this?
I don't understand.
The picture, this.
This is Bitbucket.
Bitbucket?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which we will be migrating off of soon. It was just one of those, didn't have a good option at the time. Bitbucket's just as good as bad as GitHub, so.
Okay.
But yeah, this is Bitbucket.
Where are you going to? Where are you migrating to?
Either Pagure or Fabricator.
Oh.
Our Fabricator instance. It wasn't originally set up for Git hosting.
Okay. Yep.
But yeah, this is all public. Everything's for now is under the Fedora QA thing on Bitbucket. So you can see all of our current production tasks. There's lib Taskotron. This is for building images. This is the check that we're going to be writing, or that I'm going to run you through writing. And then here's the Docker Autotest task that I was talking about. Okay, so before we get into the details, I just want to talk more about what the idea is behind what I'm going to try and walk you through. So HTTPD, I just kind of chose somewhat at random because we had a Fedora test case for it, and it's a package that most people have are at least familiar with what it does, even if they haven't used it before. And I wanted to demonstrate that we can take something like this that was written before we had much of an automation system, and then without too much effort, we can have a wrapper around it and have that run for every build of that package. And you are welcome to type along. Some of it may get a bit long, so like I said, it's already in Git. It was on the flash drive that went around already. All right, so let's try and get started. Are all the people who are trying to follow along, do you have lib Taskotron installed? Let me rephrase that. Is anyone following along and does not have lib Taskotron installed? All right, I will take that as a no. And does everyone have the disposable image?
Fine.
Oh, sorry.
So, I notice this is in Copper. Is it going to be in Fedora proper, or what?
It's on our to-do list.
Moving too fast, or is it?
It hadn't been a priority. When it was just us writing tasks, it didn't matter all that much, and it's just we haven't gotten to it yet.
So
it should, as far as I know, there's only one thing we need to change before it'll pass review for Fedora. And
yes,
I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. And then the thing that's on there is a gzip file that will need to be extracted before it's actually useful.
I think somebody did that already. Let's extract.
Oh no, that's right. I did that before I put it on there.
Yeah, which is actually bad because it's slower to copy the whole unextracted thing that would be done extracted. But
sorry,
sorry.
Yeah, I was hurrying and I just unzipped it, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh well, -K. Who needs -K? So as a summary of what we want to do is we're going to download and install the latest HTTPD build. We are going to run some simple tests using the scripts that were already written and report the results we find. And if it will play nice, generate an HTML report. So, a side effect of not having taught many people how to do this before. So I am missing a bunch of steps. So let's do those before I confuse people more. So there's a bunch of configuration that's going to have to happen, and I am writing these things down so in the future it's not quite so painful. But for now it's still we're learning.
A quick question: is
Yes.
this distinct from the directory on the USB drive that says task HTTP checked, or is that the same thing?
Basically the same thing. It is the same thing. That I wrote it and figured that's a good way to if you choose to, you can follow along and write it yourself, or you can see what I've already written. But configuration-wise, can one of you guys take notes as far as what we're going over? Because I'm not sure all of the stuff is in the documentation. Thank you. Find a terminal. There we go. So the first thing, after all that's installed, the first thing that we need is etc. Where do we want to start? Let's start with Taskotron, taskotron.yaml. Because I know if I open up, but the problem is if I do this.
Regular VI.
Oh! It's because I'm an idiot. Alright, so, wrong machine. That was on a virtual machine, not on my local. So this is the main configuration file for Taskotron. The way that we have this written out, the defaults are in here already. Otherwise they are at least mentioned. For the moment, the thing that we want to change is closer to the bottom is this image URL. For now, libtaskotron needs to be pointed to exactly where that image you downloaded is, or copied off the USB stick, in the format of the file URL. So that's where I happen to have mine. Wherever you put yours is going to change depending on the exact point in the file system.
So is this configuration system-wide configuration file normally system-wide, or is it just a convenient place to put the default? Could I have a per-user one? Or
we don't support a per-user one. That is something that I don't know. It's going to depend on how we go forward. Honestly, this is a temporary thing. Eventually, what we want to do is we want to say, hey, look, here's a place where we put images. Find the most recent one of the type you're looking for and go boot it. For this particular piece of configuration, the assumption so far has been it's going to be one configuration file per machine, but I don't think we're tied to that. It's just that's how it works.
You might be able to use Glance for that. It's the image store from OpenStack. You might be able to set that up standalone as an image store. I'm trying my very hardest not to use anything from OpenStack because it scares me. It's all in Python. It's beautiful.
It's beautiful as long as you're a user of it and you're not maintaining it.
I don't know how much that it used to be that could be installed as a standalone, just a little thing by itself, but it might have grown, tendrils and everything else. So I don't know if that's a good idea or not.
Yeah.
Would you mind just sharing what file that is again? I missed it. Yep.
Just task, tab.
So just to be clear, when you run a command, you can't say -f and then a path to a alternative file.
Do you support that? I thought it was just it will look in your local directory first.
Okay.
For I think is it local directory then conf? Libtask. I don't remember. There's two classes of
it seemed like a second ago when he asked if this was a global configuration file or if you could have alternate ones. It seemed like it was just this location that could be used, but then I asked if you could pass -f and give it an alternative, but then you just said if it will look in the local directory first, which solves the same problem, I think.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact path.
We don't have a command line option for that.
Okay, but it will look at the one in the local environment.
One extra location, which is when you check out from the Git repository, you can just use the conf directory that is in there, but you have to know about it. I think we don't have it really documented.
No. And it's if there's demand, that option could be added pretty easily.
Yeah, we should add
because it's a configuration setting. And then the next one is going to be and I am becoming aware of the irony that I said that this was supposed to be easy to set up.
I have a question regarding the intent with this. Say I want to test different distributions, with different dependencies installed, different packages. Is this like the recurrent staging image that I go into and I have nested virtualization and start other VMs? Or would I have one of these for each of the configurations and change the configuration to reflect that?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
I'm testing Fedora 23 and Fedora Rawhide. That's what I want to test my packages against, in a simple case. Do I have different configurations with this? Or do I have like one Taskotron base image, and within that I stage nested virtual containers and start Fedora 23 and Fedora Rawhide?
The way that we had in mind was to have basically the same task executed for different versions. Honestly, that starts getting into details that we haven't actually implemented yet. So if you have ideas on how to make that better, I'm definitely all for it. But the idea that I had in my mind was to try and keep it like dist-git, so that you have a task file in a master branch, F23 branch, F22 branch, F21 branch, just because the concept is there. And I think that it's going to be somewhat rare that the exact same test with the exact same arguments and the exact same things are going to be used for the Rawhide version, the 23 version, the F22 version. So to answer your question...
Yeah, I might be able to elaborate. So I think what worries us is that this is in Etsy, so this is a global configuration file. And for me, this looks like it should be a parameter for the test.
Right. It will be eventually. Like I said, it's one of the next features that's on our list is to, like, the hard coding of the image location is a very short-term thing.
And this is, the local running is basically a hacky thing that you do for development, maybe largely for development of Taskotron. The real tests are running in a different environment, right?
They are running in a similar environment. For right now, we don't support specifying your environment, but that's the thing that's coming. Is that you're going to be able to specify, I want Fedora, Rawhide, I want 23, I want to have the server edition, I want to have the workstation edition, those kind of things. Specify that, and then it'll be smart enough to say, hey, this will basically be an image directory. It's like, go look here for images. And then it will be able to find the newest image that is, F24 server. So it does not do that now. That is on the feature list.
Will it be able to bisect and figure out where my tests started failing?
I have no idea.
Wouldn't that be cool?
It would be, but as long as that.
As long as you don't have to write that. This is kind of. How close are we to my dream of having, you said like dist-git, having literally the tests be checked in next to the packages?
I'm just trying to think of how to answer that. Do
you know what I'm asking?
Yes, I do, and I'm trying to, because I just learned something new today that changes my answer. Actually, not that far away, because there's been some changes in PackageDB and there's been changes in how they're doing dist-git, so that they already have multiple repositories that are grouped under the same umbrella that have separately controllable ACLs. So it shouldn't, and I know I just swore, as a tester, the should is the S word. It shouldn't be too bad because the Git stuff is already taken care of for us.
Must not be too bad. Yeah.
The Git stuff, most of the Git stuff is already taken care of, so it's going to be a matter. The hardest parts are going to be figuring out a format and conventions.
Yeah.
Because I don't, and how we want to show the task git repo as part of the package git repo, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I don't know.
Because I mean, there's questions. It's like, okay, so then do we have it as a submodule? Do we just have it as another checkout? That's like as that Fed package can manage.
Yeah.
There are all those kind of things that haven't quite figured out the details on. But the Git stuff is mostly there. Would not take much to add a task Git repository that is attached to each package. That's what I've been told about PackageDB, is that feature was added recently. So like if you do a Fed package clone recently, it will have a message about how this isn't really what you cloned. It was supposed to be something like RPM. I don't remember exactly what it was. It just happened when I cloned a repository recently, and so that's what it's doing. When you do the Fed package clone for that package, it does some switching behind the scenes to point you at a specific package repository instead of just named as the URL you are using. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Cool.
Any other questions? Okay. That is the only thing we need to change in here. The other thing, this is why this all needs to be written down. Other thing that we are going to need is an SSH key. And it does have to be passwordless. I mean, you can just do wow, my brain is not working right now. It's SSH keygen. I can type. I swear I can type. Just do SSH keygen, ID, RSA, task, and then emphasis on no password. The way things are set up right now, if you have a key with a password, it will not work. And then one of the things you need
Is that true even if my key is in my keyring? Is that true even if my key is in my keyring?
Yes, the only thing we really support, I don't think, we don't support keyrings. It has to be files and it has to be passwordless. So, this is the important part. Is right here. This that's for convenience. You can set it really to whatever you want. There is. I wish I had the original file. I think. Huh? This is the Etsy test cloud settings.py. But the important thing here is that this is basically a template, but what we need is users, and then the is this readable?
Yeah.
Okay. It's this part right here, the user's part of this YAML, and then the SSH key that you generated goes in single quotes.
And also that thing where it looks like cloud config as a comment up there, don't be fooled, that's cloud init being stupid. That is actually configuration.
Yeah. Also, if anyone knows of an alternative to cloud init, I am all ears. I am not a huge fan of cloud init, but I don't know of alternatives.
The problem is we needed the alternative 4 years ago before cloud init became prevalent, and now it needs to be not just less crappy, it needs to be compellingly better, and this is fine. That's
it's fine in most cases.
Yeah, right, exactly. So
when it starts getting in the way of my stuff booting, I start running out of patience with it.
Yeah, we have it's a market problem.
It's undebuggable.
Or you can just reboot the machine, try again.
Yeah, why debug it?
Why debug it? It's just cattle.
Just get it right, yeah.
Yep.
So I'm just I'll just wait until I stop hearing typing, and I will assume that.
Does that mean something?
That means people are mostly done with their configuration. Is anyone having trouble with this? Is anyone having questions while typing happens? What is going to be the best way to make this easier?
Sir?
Any ideas on what the best way to make this easier would be?
Yeah, it should all happen automatically.
I was looking for more details. Than that.
we should generate the test cloud config file on the fly.
Yeah.
And we should just
or change test cloud to support passing the configuration in, so it's not tied to a single configuration file. We set everything from scratch. That would make a lot of sense.
And the only piece of information you will need is like the path to your SSH path key.
Yeah. Or even allow generation of one.
Or we can generate one on the fly.
Mm-hmm. And the %s is also important. It's a quirk of test cloud. Because if there isn't at least 1% in there, it will fail.
I like how you have a super secure password there selected.
Yep. Mm. Yeah, it's NAT only.
So is there a need for a password since you have the key?
There is no need for it. Test Cloud will set it, so if you don't have it in there, Test Cloud will explode.
Okay.
So do we need it? Do we need to use it? No. Does it need to be there? Yes. All right. Is everyone done with this part of the config? All right. Now we can actually do something. So we can go back, and I'm going to choose not to do all of the fancy remote stuff, just because the network is so bad here. I've not been able to get one run to finish today before the network times out. So we're going to go about it a slightly different way. Do create one. We can do test cloud, instance, create URL, and then give it the same.
Well, then you can also consider just running it locally. Yeah.
But this task installs HTTPD.
Oh, right. Oh. That's.
So yeah, I mean, you'd basically. Oh, how about I give it a complete command? So the format of this is the name of then the virtual machine you're creating, and here's the URL to the file that it's going to use to create that virtual machine. And the first time you use an image, it's going to take a little bit longer because the way that Test Cloud works, it's copying it to its internal cache so it can create a backing store from it. Here's the command. Does that make it harder or easier to read?
It's neutral.
Okay.
Tries to write into Warlick test cloud, but I can't do that.
Oh! More notes. They need to be added to the Test Cloud group.
Alright.
So, like I said, this is I'm learning as I go with as far as the stuff that we know internally and haven't written down. So in order for Test Cloud to work, you have to be part of the test cloud.
I feel like it.
Yeah, I know.
Just kidding.
So you need to be part of the Test Cloud group in order to spawn virtual machines. Or if you have just some virtual machine handy, that will also work. You don't have to spawn it with Test Cloud. But
do you need to be part of the Test Cloud group, or if you already have part of the group that lets you spawn VMs, will that work?
no, you have to be part of Test Cloud because of the way it copies files.
Okay, cool.
And because everything is awesome, if you are in a graphical development in a graphical environment, that means you have to log out and log back in.
You can use SU dash in a terminal, and you will get the new ones for the terminal.
You will? Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
You just need anything that gives you a new login.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need a new login. So SU dash.
But won't that give you? Oh no. Yeah, without the user, doesn't it?
And your username.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
SU dash username.
You can also create the new virtual, like the new file in the local, like in the working directory, and to avoid all that. They don't need to be in another group.
What?
Like the file you're trying to create.
Yeah.
Environment.
Yes.
You can just use the working directory.
That is a longer story. We tried to do that, and it has its own set of problems. That's how the thing started. Is it would put stuff in the home directory, and libvirt starts freaking out and does weird things when it can't own everything, and then you start having directories in your home that libvirt needs to own and changes the ownership of.
Not if you user session, not the system session of libvirt.
But if you use the user session, that means you don't have access to the networking thing. So if you want to have network access, no, you don't.
Yeah,
I tried this.
You need,
And then maybe it's something's
you need group
changed.
access to create the network once, and then you can. That's if you look at Cockpit.
We remember going through this. Maybe something's changed, but that was one of the problems we had by using the user session instead. And what was the other? There was another reason. Because we looked into using the user session, we looked into.
You can the clue is that you can open the system session as read only if you want to access network information.
That we didn't try.
If you need to get the IP address and everything.
So for me, it tries to use the user session. Now here, the test cloud thing, but fails.
That is actually not. That is part of. That's part of creating the virtual machine. When you boot it, it ends up using the system session, but libguestfs we use libguestfs to prepare it, and that will use the user session.
Okay, but it doesn't work. Well, that's
what is it saying?
It says home.cache libvirt sock, no such file or directory.
Well, it's weird that it tries to access the home cache. It should use the
libguestfs.
Oh, libguestfs.
It's libguestfs is what's doing it.
I might have funny settings.
Is using the S word it should work. So I guess I'm going to be learning. I'm learning a lot today.
You're very welcome to contact us directly.
Guestfish launch works by itself.
Cannot write either.
So this is back to the beginning, there's 3 different runners. One's the one that starts the VM, and one's the one that just does it locally. Maybe for the tutorial next time, just do the local one if you don't have all this set up for people.
Yep. No, like I said, some of this is me learning because I didn't think about that until after I wrote the task. And the problem is the task that I want to have people write installs HTTPD and downloads stuff and then changes configuration file and really needs root access, which I didn't really want. I don't want running on my
web server on your laptop, right?
Which I don't want running on my laptop. I'm not going to stop you from doing it, but.
Second time looks better.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
All right. So does everyone have a virtual machine? Ish? No.
Yep.
Oh, I think you said no. So make note of the IP address, because we're going to need that. Okay, so let's get to actually creating the task itself. So, because one of the things we designed for is having everything in a Git repository, it is going to help you out later to create a directory for the entire task that will eventually be that Git repository. This would just be my suggestion. This is what I used for names. You are welcome to use whatever you would like. But just creating those files. Is everyone... Is anyone still typing? All right, it's hard to tell when I can change slides and when I can't. So getting started with this, I'm actually going to switch over to, is this readable?
It's okay.
I can change, I mean, okay. So the thing that every task basically needs is this part, sans the comment. So when we're going through this, each task needs a name, a description, which is really just something that is going to be shown to humans, and the same thing with the maintainer. The idea here is that if someone sees it and it's broken, they know who to at least start talking to about getting something fixed or what something means. The other metadata that is in here is describing the arguments and what we need. There are only certain types of information that libtaskotron works with. And for right now, we support Koji builds, Bodhi updates, composes. God, there's another one. What am I forgetting? Oh, Koji tag. And there will be more in the future. Again, it's one of those things where the purpose of this is to serve people. So if there's stuff we don't support, tell us. So that it can work for what people want to use it for. One of the other things you can do, and I'm just going to show this you don't, for this particular task you don't need it. You can also describe the environment and the RPMs, so that by describing the RPMs that need to be in the environment, libtaskotron will go try to install all of these if they aren't already present before the task is executed. But in the case of what we are trying to do here, we are going to download all the RPMs anyways. So
well, does it get them from Koji otherwise, or does it get them?
It gets them from the repositories.
Okay, so you do both, you prepare and then pull.
Mm-hmm. All right, so for better or for worse, we've decided basically the tasks are basically YAML, which I imagine isn't anyone's favorite, but I'm not sure I've heard anyone go into a rage fit about having to write YAML. If we chose to do this in Perl or Python, I imagine that we might have fits of rage. So it's bland and neutral, and it should be enough to, and it's enough to get the job done. One of the concepts we have is these variables. And this is, as far as I know, it's in the documentation. When you start this, there are certain variables that are already available to you. This work dir, every time you start the task, libtaskotron will create a temporary directory for you and basically run everything in there, trying to keep the noise out of, or trying to keep things separated. So that is one of the variables. Another variable is whatever we've passed in, because this would be an item type. You pass in, the value, whatever that Koji build is, which is available itself as a variable. If it were a compose, the name of the variable would be compose. If it was a Koji tag, the variable would be Koji tag. And those are the variables you start off with. So we are going to do, we have a, I'm already rethinking how I'm doing this. So each task is made up of, we have our metadata, we have our actions. And actions are directives of what we're calling them. So we have a Koji directive, we have a Mash directive, we have a Python directive. All of these are in the documentation, or the online documentation as well. But for the Koji directive, we give an action which is download or download tag. So there are some instances where we want to download an entire Koji tag, and that will do that. But in this case, we only want the one build. We want the build that we triggered on, and we want to get the x86-64 arch, and we want to get no arch, and we want to download it to this directory.
So that gets all the sub-packages of that architecture?
It will get everything from that SRPM. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
So every RPM that was built as that was part of that build. And in this case, we're just grabbing the x86-64 and the no arch ones. So it won't grab SRPMs and it won't grab x86-32. It won't grab ARM.
If for some reason I wanted a source RPM, will it do that too?
Yeah.
Or is it
You can use all. You can use source RPM. You can add. So like if I wanted that, I could do.
Each directive has documentation online, so you can see the available arguments to those options.
Right, cool.
Which I really, if I didn't, I really hope I put that in the presentation.
I need to run off, so thank you very much, Tim.
Wow, I'm just going to have one of these days. What was?
Try HTTPS.
Oh, thank you.
If you guys are done in 20 minutes, come join me in the Fedora QA session.
There's a Fedora QA session?
Yeah, Fedora Council QA, Q&A.
Q&A.
Not you.
I was like...
Sorry, that was wrong context in this room.
And again with the slow network. But there are docs. Oh, yes, but I also have them built. Am I not seeing? Okay. So we do have, so like the directives, so like for example, we want the, like for example, Koji. So this is what we were just using. So these are all online. If you wanted to use Koji, it will tell you, so you have an action. It can either be download, download tag, or download the last stable one. So for example, one of the questions that came up earlier today was about comparing the latest with a, like the last stable build. So you can download the last stable build from Koji when you give it the new build. But all this documentation is available online when you have competent network.
I guess I could just check the documentation, but what's the mash action doing?
That is another thing that is very much a Fedora-ism, and that doesn't always occur to me that it's not commonplace. So mash is a tool to create repositories. It is sort of a superset of create repo.
Yep. Okay. Yep.
The reason that I use mash here instead of create repo is mostly because it was already there. But one of the things that mash does is it handles multilib. Mm-hmm. So it will handle getting the x86-32 bits to an x86-64 machine.
Ah, I see.
So when you just do create repo, you have 3 separate repos. You have the 32-bit, you have the source, you have the x86 RPM. When you point mash at the entire directory, it will remove the 32-bit RPMs that would have conflicted. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense. Yeah.
But in this exact case, it shouldn't have been necessary to have the directive here, because ideally we would just install the packages that we downloaded, but we discovered some kind of bug or something. Maybe
Yeah,
in
I have
maybe in our
I have a
code.
huge list of RFEs.
Yeah.
This dog foodie experience of me writing this has been incredibly instructive because it's like, well, this is stupid.
And
why does it work this way?
We found out that we have to create a repository just to install the downloaded packages for some reason, so that's why it is there. But
Thank you, DNF.
it should not be there.
Okay.
Yeah, because I tried doing, downloading the packages and then just doing DNF install and then pointing it at the files. But if those weren't in the right order, DNF would refuse to install them. So, hence the creating a repository and then doing nastiness that shouldn't have to do. So I suspect that because I think I have, how much time left? Like 30 minutes or something like that? It was
Actually, 8 minutes.
8 minutes?
Yeah.
All right, so I think we are going to wrap. So I think we'll wrap up the official parts of this. So I'll just kind of go through what it's supposed to do, and then I will show what it looks like when it runs. So what we are doing, and this will change because this is a pain in the butt. You're downloading the new RPMs, and then making them into a repository, and then we're delegating out to the Python directive. So the Python directive is loading this other Python file. It's calling prepare, and then the things after the callable, those are variable list of args that get passed into the function. Or the callable. It can be a method, it can be a function. So in this case, it goes out to this prepare, where you can see some of the insanity. So we have two arguments here, which come from these two will match up, and so when you use these, it will use the keyword args. So it will be in that order, but it also will give them keyword args to match the names that are here. And then it goes through and it does all of this, which is basically some nastiness that shouldn't have to happen, so you can install from a local repository, install our packages using DNF, starting HTTPD, and restarting it to make sure that it caught the mod PHP and mod SSL. The next thing we do is we actually, that shouldn't be there. We actually run the tests. So that again, we're doing the Python directive. We're delegating to httpd test.py, which is and this callable. And so we have the original test case had these shell scripts. So we had the basic auth, we had PHP, serve HTML, SSL, and then virthost. And this is just a Pythonic way of going through all those shell scripts. Then creating check detail results. And this is one of the advantages you can get by writing things in Python. We have a bunch of convenience methods already there. So like, for example, this check detail, you can change the result, you can have multiple check detail objects, and then when you're done, you just pass it into this check.export YAML, and it's relatively future-proof. Because that's the interface that we use. So if there are any changes in the future, this will still work. Versus manually constructing something. But then it will just run through these things and show the results. And the command to do this, so I'm going through. Run task is the entry point for the runner. And the part of what Taskotron does is we have this key value pair. So we have we're talking about the Koji build, Koji tag, Bodhi update, compose is what we're supporting for now. So this is the type. So we're giving the type of a Koji build, and this I just grabbed out of Koji. This is the most recent HTTPD build, but as an item. And we're using SSH is for the pre-existing virtual machine, and then I give it credentials. So I have root at that IP address, and for the sake of completeness, I am telling it where. This is something you can put in the configuration file, but for the sake of completeness, I'm putting on the command line as well. So use this private key when you open the SSH session.
Or if you have it in home/.ssh, it should like find it automatically.
Yeah. And then pointing it at that YAML file, which from where I happen to be is in the previous directory, and then giving it the YAML file. So I enter, and it goes through, and I don't think I need to narrate the output that's going across the screen. But it goes through, it tries to install that stuff. It's already installed, so there's nothing to do. Now it's funny. This is going to fail because I already ran the task in here. Oh well. Let's see what a failure looks like. Oh no, they all passed. Cool. So I like being wrong in those sentences, in those cases. So going through, this is, it's just showing, it's in pretty much in debug mode. So it's relatively verbose, but it's going through and it's saying what it did. So we downloaded all the stuff for the RPMs. We created the repository, went through, installed the packages we needed, and then started running the actual tests. So here are what would have been reported if we actually had this hooked up to a reporting mechanism. So the basic auth passed, PHP failed, serve HTML passed, serve SSL passed, vhost passed. And then it stored the artifacts from this in this directory. So I realize I kind of I think I'm over time, aren't I?
Not yet. We have 3 minutes. So
3 minutes?
I'm lying to you with this, but...
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought I was out of time already, so...
No.
I realize I breezed through that, and I appreciate... I appreciate staying here, paying attention, asking questions, pointing out where the weaknesses are, because I find that I can be way too close to things. So it's like all of a sudden, what is MASH? Well, of course, everyone knows what MASH is. But like I mentioned, just dog fooding is. I have a huge list of RFEs just from writing that simple task. If there are things that you want to do that you find you can't do, please let us know. If you run into problems, please let us know. Please come find me. If you can't, it's like we're in Pound Fedora QA on Freenode. I'm Tim Flink, tflink@fedoraproject.org, tflink@redhat.com. IRC Nick is tflink. Come find me and ask me questions. I am more than happy to help. I want people to start using this. I want to help people help get this in people's hands. So please let us know. Let me know if you have questions or if you have suggestions. And malformed links, go. And that's just basically what I'd said. And things that I've learned is that dog fooding is a good idea. And don't count on network for a demo. Those are the things that I have learned and relearned. Yeah, malformed dogs, awesome. So that would be pretty much it. Does anyone have questions, comments, thoughts? Rotten vegetables? Hopefully not.
Thanks for
All right. Well, thank you very much. And again, please, if you have questions, if you have comments, please let me know. Before I walk off.
Can I get your slides?
Yeah, they're not finished. I can.
One legal question. Have you heard about Mikado?
Yes.
So, I think what you're trying to do is has a lot of
I agree that there are a lot of parallels and there is some intersection. I don't think it's the same thing. It's not. Yes, I agree. There's a decent amount of overlap.
You got it?
I'm trying to think of. We are a little bit more language and test agnostic. They have a lot more deep test. Like really cool testing features, I guess I would say. One of the things that I'm interested in doing eventually is integrating with Avocado so that we can, use that as a runner.
Yeah, that's not what I was thinking of the comparison. I mean, one of the biggest differences, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you have the YAML, the tasks, and different things. I think that's where I see the future value. It's like that list of actions expands.
Yeah.
You can have a higher level of abstraction of the tasks.
Yeah, just keep in mind that you have seen just a small bit of the whole Taskotron. So what makes the whole Taskotron, we have the trigger which listens for events and fires the relevant actions, relevant tasks.
Yeah, but hopefully they won't have to care about it.
So the lead Taskotron might have some overlap with Avocado, but it's just a small part of the Taskotron framework as a whole. So yeah, we definitely think about like integrating other test runners into it, and still we will use all the other pieces of the Taskotron framework.
The question is how much infrastructure would I need to set up if I set up
For writing tasks?
If I need to test different distributions,
Well, when we stay with Fedora, you should just need the Taskotron, and then you can write the task, and if it works for you, you can submit it, I don't know, into some repo and ask us to execute it on every new package build or something like that. And it should be everything you need just with Taskotron, and we handle all the
I'm Tim.
the Taskotron will test, they
Oh,
always
sorry.
run,
I just
they
reflexed.
always run the same machine, right? So if I have a virtual machine that has the lib on there, it basically copies the test and runs them locally. Is that correct? So I can't touch the page where I have the test and it interface with
Like
the virtual machine over network. Or no, even just one. Say I'm not in the same, say I want to test if the firewall is blocking my access. How do I test that?
That's still kind of multiple, because you have two hosts.
The status
and
for
one
a while
trying
is
to access
the ABI package diff was not
Yeah,
gone.
we don't have support with that.
For a while, yeah, I know it's done
okay with
now.
just
As far as I know,
using
all the
virtual
features that were needed in
the
libtaskotron there
current
was